They called her a gold digger, mocked her, dragged her, tore her name to pieces. But when the truth finally came out, the world realized she was the one who kept that billionaire alive. The world always loves a beautiful disaster. And when Sarah Morgan stepped into the public eye, tall, radiant, with glowing umber skin and a quiet grace that made even the elite pause, people immediately wrote her story for her. They didn't need to know her. They saw the surface and believed they had all the answers. Richard Kensington, on the other hand, carried the effortless confidence of a man who had spent his entire life cushioned by generational wealth. British American, polished and impeccably groomed, he was the kind of man who looked like he belonged on magazine covers. Gray at the temples, sharp jawline, tailored suits worth more than most annual salaries. When photos first surfaced of the two walking together through Manhattan, his hand protectively at the small of her back, her lips curved in a soft, uncertain smile, the internet reacted instantly. Classic gold digger, trophy wife in the making. Another one chasing the Kensington money. People didn't need facts, they had their assumptions. To them, Richard was the wealthy older man indulging in a beautiful young companion. And Sarah? Well, she was just another pretty black woman who had supposedly hit the jackpot. The media painted their relationship like a glossy magazine spread. Private jets, Hampton weekends, diamonds gifted casually over brunch. Photos of Sarah in silk gowns, stepping out of chauffeured cars, only fueled the narrative. To the world, their story was simple. A rich man, a gorgeous woman, a predictable arrangement. But stories built on judgment always leave out the truth. 2 years later, without warning, headlines erupted like fireworks. Richard Kensington files for divorce. Sarah Morgan to receive $10 million settlement. The public didn't gasp, they snarled. The comments rolled in like a wave of venom. She didn't even last long. She came, took the money, and dipped. 10 million? For what? Talk shows dissected her. Podcasts mocked her. Influencers used her as a punchline. The narrative was neatly packaged. A wealthy, generous man had been taken advantage of by a cunning young woman who knew exactly what she was doing all along. But something was off. Deeply off. Richard Kensington was known for one thing when it came to relationships: ironclad prenups. Even his siblings used to joke that he wouldn't share a French fry without legal protection. So how did Sarah Morgan walk away with $10 million? Confusion buzzed through every digital corner, and people began to speculate. Was she pregnant? Was there a scandal? Did she blackmail him? Did she threaten to expose something? Nothing made sense. And that was the first small crack in the perfect judgment people thought they had. Sarah had never been one to defend herself online. She wasn't built for drama, and she never tried to be a celebrity. Her world had always been smaller, quieter, rooted in community and family. But the truth, her truth, didn't live on gossip blogs. Behind the scenes, her marriage had been a storm hidden inside a crystal castle. She hadn't entered Richard's world for wealth. She entered it for love. Before the jets, before the mansions, before the cameras, Sarah had met Richard at a charity event in Brooklyn where she volunteered every weekend. He had been there for publicity. She'd been there to serve food to families who couldn't afford groceries. He was fascinated by her humility. She was drawn to the pieces of him the world never saw. But once married, the differences between their worlds didn't disappear. They grew. Sarah became his emotional anchor, steadying him through business failures, panic attacks he hid from everyone else, and the silent pressure of upholding the Kensington legacy. She coordinated family interventions, managed his mother's failing health, and spent countless nights alone in their penthouse while he traveled for work or escaped into his stress. The public saw photos of her at galas. They didn't see her holding him together behind closed doors. The sacrifices no one knew about. She put her own dreams on pause, twice. She turned down a full-ride graduate scholarship because he needed her in London for 6 months. She gave up starting a community youth center because he insisted the timing wasn't right. She woke up early to prepare for meetings he dreaded, coached him through speeches, and even ghost wrote heartfelt letters that saved fractured business relationships. She wasn't his decorative accessory, she was his foundation. But in a world obsessed with surface-level beauty, no one saw the labor she poured into the relationship. The prenup that wasn't. Here's what shocked the world. Richard never made her sign a prenup. Not because he forgot, not because she refused, but because he insisted she didn't need one. "I trust you, Sarah," he had said. "You're the first person in my life I don't need protection from." It was the most vulnerable truth he'd ever shared with anyone. So when their marriage fell apart, not because of cheating or betrayal, but because of emotional exhaustion, misalignment, and the pressure of living in two different worlds, the settlement wasn't a payout. It was compensation, recognition, a long overdue acknowledgement of everything she had poured into his life. A judge reviewed the evidence. Years of text messages, therapy notes, financial contributions she had made from her own small savings, and testimony from those who saw how much she had supported him. 10 million wasn't a reward, it was fairness. But fairness never trends as fast as scandal. While the internet raged, Sarah stayed silent and worked. And this is where the narrative shifted, slowly, powerfully, undeniably. Instead of yachts or designer addictions, she channeled the 10 million into things that mattered. 1. She launched the youth center she had once sacrificed, a vibrant building in Brooklyn offering mentorships, after-school programs, counseling, and grants for young Black girls who wanted to enter business, tech, or the arts. 2. She created a fund for women leaving emotionally draining or unequal relationships. Not to demonize men, she refused to do that, but to give women the resources she once didn't have: legal support, therapy, housing stability, and career training. 3. She quietly supported Richard's mother's medical bills even after the divorce. No camera recorded it. No blog reported it. She did it because compassion was her default setting, not a performance. When the media finally caught wind of her work months later, the internet couldn't keep its grip on the old story. People began to dig deeper. Reporters interviewed former staff who recalled how kind she had been despite the pressures. Friends of the family came forward, sharing stories of how she had been the glue holding the Kensington household together. Slowly, what had once been mockery turned into admiration, redefining gold digger. The world began to rethink the term. Maybe a gold digger wasn't someone who married rich. Maybe the real gold diggers were people who buried women's sacrifices because they didn't fit a convenient narrative. Sarah didn't win because she walked away with $10 million. She won because she walked away with her dignity and used the settlement to build something bigger than herself. Richard, in several interviews, quietly admitted, "Sarah deserved every cent. She carried more of our marriage than I ever did." That sentence alone shattered the internet's favorite lie. Sarah's story became a modern parable, one that forced people to look deeper, think harder, and confront the bias that hides in plain sight. Perception versus reality. We live in a world that judges at the speed of a scroll, a world where appearance is treated as evidence, a world where women, especially Black women, are boxed into stereotypes before they even speak. Sarah's journey reminded people that relationships are layered, complex, and filled with invisible labor that outsiders will never see. Modern relationship landscape experts on talk shows began referencing Sarah as an example of how emotional support, sacrifice, caretaking, and personal compromise are forms of value, even if they don't come with a paycheck. Relationships aren't just financial exchanges. They are emotional contracts. And when one partner carries the weight, there should be acknowledgement, compensation, and respect. The enduring legacy. In the years that followed, Sarah became a quiet force in her community. Not a celebrity, not an influencer, not a millionaire flaunting luxury, but a woman who built a legacy out of pain, resilience, and clarity. Richard remarried eventually, but even he credited Sarah for teaching him emotional responsibility and the true meaning of partnership. And in interviews, when asked if she regretted anything, Sarah always answered the same way: "I don't regret loving. I regret letting people outside the relationship tell our story before I could." Her youth center thrived. Her support fund saved hundreds of women. Her story became a case study in universities discussing gender, race, and power dynamics. And online, people stopped calling her a gold digger. They started calling her what she always was, a builder, a giver, a woman who turned judgment into justice, a woman who refused to let the world tell her who she was.